And then they say, no, we're the platform that beats them all. You're like, oh, you mean a monolith?
Yeah.
Now they've done their acquisitions, that's how they feel.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to episode 274 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast, a proud member of the Marketing Podcast Network. I hope you're well and are staying as sane as you feel you need to be. I'm your host, Ian Truscott. I'm not a rockstar, but I am a CMO, and on this podcast, I chat with a band of marketing chums who share their marketing street knowledge, which I hope will bring out the rockstar marketer in you. This week, it's my chum, Cathy McKnight, Chief Problem Solver at 7 Bear, who makes her monthly visit to the studio, and inspired by the recent acquisition of Informatica by Salesforce, we dig into our experience of acquisitions, working for the vendors, client side, and as advisors. But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back after this word.
We'll be right back.
After this word.
When it comes to relevant content, you may have heard Jeff and me talk about the multis on this show. Multi-channel, multi-device, multi-persona, and multi-language. On that last one, let me ask, how confident are you that your content actually connects in every market? You're not sure? Well, it might be time to check out Phrase. In our experience, this stuff used to be hard, but Phrase makes it simple with its industry-leading AI localization platform that helps you deliver content in multiple languages without losing your tone, your message, or your mind. It automates the manual work, slashes review time, and gives you real data on what's working and where. Brands like Uber and Zendesk trust Phrase to scale their content across the globe and get it right every time. If you're serious about reaching more people and driving better results internationally, head over to phrase.com/MPN and take a look. That's phrase.com/MPN.
You know that feeling when someone shows up for you just when you need it most? That's what Uber is all about. Not just a ride or dinner at your door. It's how Uber helps you show up for the moments that matter. Because showing up can turn a tough day around or make a good one even better. Whatever it is, big or small, Uber is on the way. So you can be on yours. Uber, on our way.
Welcome back to Rockstar CMO FM. Cassie, how are you?
I am well, Ian. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm chatting to you. The sun's out. It's a good day.
Indeed, yeah. We've got our sun back here. It's been a mighty cold May, so looking forward to a warmer June.
Yeah, but you say you had a mighty cold May. You were away for most of it, though, weren't you?
Well, I was away for a good 10 days of it. I went to Spain and I walked part of the Camino, which was fantastic. I'd never been. So a few days in Madrid, almost 120 kilometers over 5 days of walking. It was spectacular.
And it goes north, doesn't it?
Yes, we were doing the French route, so one actually it's 800 kilometers from start to finish, and it goes through the Pyrenees Mountains and whatnot. So it's very hilly. It's one of I think it's the most challenging part, but it was you head northwest towards the northwest corner of Spain, and it was fantastic. It was everything I expected it to be.
Nice, and you had good weather.
For the most of it. Our first day was rainy, and then it just got better and better. So
nice.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, it's a good time of the year to do it in northern Spain right now. Do it any later and it'd be too hot, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Our days, by the end of the week, it was mid-20s. And when you're walking and carrying a 25-pound pack, it's hot.
Wow. So you had to carry your own stuff between each of the different places you were staying?
We did, yeah. And you know what? We had always planned to do that. And then we got to it was hilarious. We got to our second place that we stayed, and you know how sometimes there's flyers for like taxis or restaurants and stuff. And there was a flyer, an ad for transportation of your bag, and it was only €4 to go for them to carry it from place to place. And we're like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? But we stuck with it. We made a commitment, so we carried it the whole way. But you can be sure on the next one, we will be having them transported.
You'll have a little team of Spanish Sherpas. That sounds fantastic. Well, good to know. Anyway, when you came back, I think it's when you came back, I noticed I'm going to just change gears straight to marketing because of the nature of this podcast. I do apologize, Cathy.
No, it's all good. Hard left. Let's go.
All right. Well, you posted on LinkedIn because Salesforce have recently acquired Informatica, which is quite a big deal and quite surprising. Well, I thought it was surprising, but you've probably got your finger on the pulse of these things.
It actually wasn't surprising. This was their second attempt. They worked on it last year and couldn't come to terms. So it was this was round at least 2 of getting the deal done.
Yeah, and I thought I'd ask you about it. One, because it's quite a big deal in the world of marketing and sales, and also I thought it opened up I'm going to claim this, but you actually said this might be a good idea to talk about this, which is it opens up the conversation about acquisitions in general and how they impact us as CMOs and how they impact our clients and all that stuff. But let's start with the Salesforce deal, because you said on paper, SF buying Informatica for $8 billion makes sense. I'm not sure that $8 billion and makes sense. I'd love that to be.
I'd like that to make sense in my world, but
yeah, exactly. I love it. Yeah. Access to cleaner, richer, governed data to feed Salesforce's AI dreams, which I thought was a great statement. Feeding Salesforce's AI dreams. And you also went on to make reference to Informatica's data smarts around metadata integration and quality. But so that works really well with their AI strategy. But on the other hand, maybe Salesforce hasn't got such a great track record of executing on its acquisitions. So what say you about that then, Cathy? Let's start with that.
Yeah, so I really want this to work. I would love for Salesforce to be the one setting the tone and the example of what good data, clean data for AI and automation, all of things work, how it works well. It's still too early to tell. They're just starting to look at integrations and how that's going to work. It's certainly going to bolster their data management and AI capabilities. But, they should buyer beware. Salesforce is a prolific acquisition pattern company. If you look over the years, what they've bought, what they've spent. But it hasn't always been a great fit. And don't get me wrong, I love Salesforce, great client, great company. They do a lot of good things, but like every company, they have missteps. Slack was one of them. I was very excited about the Slack acquisition, but concerned because I knew the company, I knew the culture, I knew of the founders and the approach and how the company had been cultivated and grown. And that was not in line with how Salesforce operate. And true to my worries, that has not been a great experience, I don't think, for anybody. They've, certainly integrated some of the capabilities, but not all. It certainly hasn't delivered what they expected. And there's been some significant ecosystem hurdles, not all of which they have cleared. Cultural clashes that have led to a lot of, big name departures and whatnot. So, you're never going to get them all right. That happens to be one that they didn't get very right. But they've done other ones well, right? Tableau, pretty good. Although, again, the integration probably missed some of them. MuleSoft, very good.
Yeah,
that was an excellent. That's an example of a really good integration that they had, or acquisition rather. Sorry.
I think the interesting thing about Slack is I still like it, even though it's been acquired by somebody. Which is, you see what Microsoft have done to Skype, and out of out of the marvelousness that was Skype, they managed to develop Teams, which fuck knows how they did that, because that is just horrible.
I love nobody ever. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas you get people, and this is where Salesforce needs to be cautious when you talk about culture, absolutely, because people actually love Slack, don't they? And they and it's one of those poster children of product-led growth, and that it would just sneak into enterprises and becoming the enterprise de facto before anybody really noticed. So so that's the sort of Salesforce's track record. And so where is it that if we look at this particular acquisition, the advantage then is the improvement of Salesforce's general data management capabilities, because that's what Informatica has, and that'll fuel their AI better. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
And is it? I don't know enough about either of the companies these days. I used to know a lot more about Informatica than I do now. But Do you think it's going to replace anything at Salesforce? Do you think they're going to merge product together, or do you think this is a standalone?
No, this is
solution?
a foundational acquisition, I think, for Salesforce. So they'll put it into Salesforce Core as something that feeds into a lot of the different components.
Yeah,
because they're building AI into everything, right?
Yeah.
So as is everybody. That's not a slam. That's just today's world. So no, it'll become a foundational component of how Salesforce moves forward, I think. Yeah,
and it's interesting, isn't it? Because vendors putting AI into everything was going to be one of the topics we were going to discuss, but there's no point. It's just, it's in everything, as you say.
Yeah.
So if we then broaden the conversation out to talk about acquisitions a bit more from your experience, what examples would you give of acquisitions in sales and marketing technology who's done a good job recently, do you think?
So I mentioned MuleSoft.
That's true.
You know what? Really good integration. It totally enhanced their data connectivity. So that was brilliant. Adobe's Magento, one of the best commerce buys ever, I think. Totally expanded their commerce capabilities. They didn't break it.
Argue. Yeah, I mean, they're going way back to when they acquired Day, right? It was the start of all that, which has been splendid.
I think the recent content stacks Lytics for their real-time personalization enhancement, I think was a smart buy. Now, we'll see how that goes. It kind of went against content stacks. You know, we're not in it to be all things to all people. And then they went through this run of buying things. So, you know. I love that. It's like Prime DXP, right? Is that there were standalone vendors that said, no, we're battling against the monoliths. And then they say, no, we're the platform that beats them all. You're like, oh, you mean the monolith? Yeah.
Now they've done their acquisitions, that's how they feel. So you think that's positive content stack, do you?
Yeah, I think so. I think ultimately it will be. I mean, whatever, you know, do as I say, not as I do, right? So they're doing what they're doing. They're not doing what they're saying. And I still love Content Stack. I still think it's a killer solution, and it has a lot of flexibility that some of the other contemporaries don't, in terms of you don't have to buy the entire everything to make it work. That was one of the things I loved about Episerver before it became Optimizely, right? You could start anywhere with them. So I think Content Stack is where Episerver was maybe before the Optimizely acquisition.
Yeah. I also quite like that. Well, the other thing is with all of these things is knowing who your audience are and sticking to your bread and butter customers and being loyal to them. And I think that's something we've seen. I mean, Storyblock aren't really in this conversation because they haven't really made any acquisitions, but your comment there about having a standalone product that you can sort of start with is, I think, a good strategy. And also, but that means that, and it's the same with your comment about Slack, is that here was a product built for the users. So say like Storyblock is really built for developers originally, right? You can't abandon those people. And it's the same with Slack, isn't it? It was kind of like the geeks and the techies who were getting into Slack first and then sharing it with the rest of the organization. That was what made it viral internally. So
yeah, and I think just the last one I think that did well was Optimizely's acquisition of Welcome.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So you know, the whole Episerver Optimizely thing, yes. But more recently, I think it was 2021, thereabouts, that added the marketing orchestration capabilities, which that was one of the first. So that's when people started chit-chatting. They caught up to me about orchestration because that brought it to the forefront.
Yeah.
And what's the difference?
Well, I mean, there's so many different rabbit holes we could go down. We'll talk about brand in a minute when we're talking about Optimizely. But I also think that, I don't know how we stitch all this together, but not all acquisitions are equal, are they? So when you make the statement of, who's done a good job of an acquisition, we tend to judge it by a different set of criteria, don't we? Because we're looking at, from the customer's perspective or our own perspective as marketing practitioners, what extra functionality is it going to give us? Is it going to be less expensive? What have I got to worry about? But I think one of the important things about when you approach an acquisition either as a customer or like us as observers, is understanding the reason behind it, right? It might be a financial roll-up. You're just trying to reduce cost in both businesses. It keeps both of those products in play in a sense. It's almost like, they're clinging onto the life raft and of each other, right? It might be you're acquiring talent. So that's what it looked like Microsoft were doing with Skype, but I don't know where the talent went because they created Teams, right?
There's a ton of different reasons, right? It's about expanding product capability.
Exactly.
So, build versus buy has always been a debate. And there have been instances where a vendor has bought and then put it on the shelf and built.
Yep.
Salesforce has done that. Adobe has done that. I think Sitecore has done that. Sometimes that expanding of capabilities is to enter a new market or segment, right? So we were talking a little bit whether or not we should get into the whole, CMS, and then it was, EMS, and then it was, all of the different enterprise content management, and then DXP. And we're not going down the DXP route because that'll just send me off on a tangent. It's often a catch up, right? Like the accelerated time to market. So are their competitors or their primary competitors well ahead of them, and they don't have an option other than to buy so that they can be at the start or midline or whatever you want as the measuring stick. Sometimes it's a talent play, right? It's a specialized, and they're not actually going to use the technology that's available. They're going to use the talent, which is an incredible, it can absolutely like bolster the entire baseline of the technology, right? Because you're not just focusing it on one piece, but if you're buying it for a talent capability that is either hard to come by individually or very unique or truly innovative, then who cares if you use the tech, right?
Yeah, but that, for fear of running into tangents here, but I think the execution of that has got to be done incredibly well, right? Because because the cultural acquisition is the big challenge there. I mean, you mentioned that about Salesforce and Slack. Yeah. It's an important thing. Also, it may be they're acquiring the customers, or maybe the opposite, they're acquiring new tech to sell to their existing customers. And if you're a customer on either end of that, you've got to be careful of those things, right? So you've got to judge how you judge the acquisitions. They're not all equal. So there's that to look at, and then to poke into the tech, because you're a techie, I'm techie. Let's talk about marketing technology here. So one of the challenges I think that they have when these acquisitions happen is to do that depth of due diligence around getting the technology together. So you've seen that, right? Where it looks like a great story, but actually behind the scenes, it's quite difficult to implement. You got an example of that?
It absolutely is. On the surface, it's really easy to look at like financials and headcount and customer logos and although I put the air quotes around customer logos because, you see everybody's, you think of like your top 5 brands that everybody knows and everybody seems to be working with them, right? Yeah. And or the wink, wink, nudge, nudge for the brands you're not actually allowed to put on the slide, but it's because they had one meeting or they, provided one line of code or something. So, but it's much, much harder to really understand what the tech actually is and how it looks, sort of how the engine is running. And we've seen, again, examples of companies that I guess didn't dig deep enough, right? And when you look at today, especially how quickly the ecosystems are changing and having to adapt, that technology, the existing technology that you're hoping or depending on integrating into or bringing onto, one little thing could mean that it doesn't work. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
Or it breaks what's already existed. And the thing is, you're not just acquiring the current state, you're acquiring its tech debt.
Yeah.
So you can't just look at what's current. You've got to look at how it was built. Because we've all seen spaghetti code. And it's all fine and well, and it works it could work for decades, and then all of a sudden, one little thing, and it's like a house of cards, right? So it just it blows up.
And I think, and that's one of the things to look at, isn't it? Is how many of the customers are on your current version, and how many they're on all these old versions with this spaghetti code. And I mean, I've got an example of this where when I was, I probably shouldn't name names. I was at a company that acquired another CMS vendor, a small CMS vendor, and their strategy was they were looking for something that was entry level. So they wanted to broaden their footprint in the CMS market their main product was a bit too enterprise, and they wanted something entry level. So they went and acquired this company, and it all looked good on the surface. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, the product was based on an underlying technology that was going to get deprecated by Microsoft imminently. So it was like a ticking time bomb, and this thing needed to move off of this technology. Only the cost of doing that and retooling just wasn't economically viable with the customer base that they had. So then you've got the challenge, and I happen to be the person looking after our product strategy that had to make the decision that we had to drown one of our babies.
Yes.
And that
what a horrible...
Sorry. I should have said something. Well, what's the better analogy than that?
Okay. It's all good. You've said it now.
But, you don't want to. And you've got all these people because these things are quite tribal, and all the people that have come in through this acquisition love their product.
Yeah.
But not all of them know the challenges going on underneath the hood. And there are people around today that hate me because I had to, take their product out behind the barn.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the cost...
Is that a better analogy?
Yes. The cost really comes from the cultural and the strategic, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's tough.
Oh, culture. I didn't make a note of this in our notes for the discussion. That is, and you mentioned it in Slack. It's so true, because where I was a part of a company that got acquired, and what impressed me was the company already had the story in place. They they knew where we were going to fit into that story. Mm-hmm. Clearly, there's always going to be efficiencies that need to be found in any acquisition. So there isn't a seat for everybody in the new company. But if you're joining something and you think, well, these guys have a plan, you're 75% of the way there, right? Because you're now on board with that plan. And I think people, when you're part of a financial roll-up or something like that, or something iffy is going on, it's easy to sort of smell that and go, yeah. One of my mates actually worked for a company where they were doing acquisitions, and they were just buying companies that had big contracts for service, and they weren't interested in any new business, no development of the product. They were just going to...
Sorry, I had a little cough there.
Yeah, well, no, these people they make open text look like Snow White compared to these bastards. And they just stripped the company and just would, if you had big contracts with people like BT and stuff like that, they would carry on just milking that until the whole, the thing actually died.
The thing is, and this happens whether you're talking technology, whether you're talking consulting firms, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. One of the things, and I find it really interesting because I've been through 4 mergers or acquisitions with companies that I've worked for. So I've seen it. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen it with small companies, and I was part of an acquisition into PwC, and then the PwC acquisition into IBM. So from teeny tiny to the biggest that there is. Mm-hmm. And what I find really interesting is how people get their knickers in a knot about, when that happens, when they come in and they either break down the company or they change the direction. People will say anything to sell a company. Ultimately, as an owner of a company, and maybe this makes me an awful horrible person, if somebody was offering me over what my company valuation is, or like a really, you have a range, for easy math, let's say, $100 to $500 to $1,000 is the range. And, $700 would probably be a very fair price, and somebody's offering me $1,000.
Yeah, okay.
Who's not going to take that? It's a business decision. We're talking from a lot of these people, it's life-changing money. This is what they've worked their entire lives for, where they've been in debt, where they've not eaten, where they haven't seen their families for literally months. because they're building something, and then someone comes along and does this. We judge because we're not in that position.
Yeah.
So, just on the people side of things, it's business. It's not personal.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that is a difficult, because also you do have employees, especially ones that were there near the beginning of the organization. And it's hard for them, isn't it, to see the founder go and, ride their white horse off to Chocolate Island or whatever, and everybody's scrambling. I actually had acquisition I've already mentioned. I was, the company I was working for got acquired, and, I was doing my best to sort of fit in with the new guys. And the CEO of the company that had just been sold said to me, "What are you doing hanging out with those people?" As if I was being disloyal. And I'm like, "You sold the company, mate. I've got to make my own way here."
I didn't get a check. Right, exactly. So it's that's just on the people side of thing. I just find it really interesting, and a lot of, now, not all, I've worked for several entrepreneurs, and not all of them were upstanding individuals and did not recognize the contribution. And I'm not saying for me, like others that gave them the ability to sell the company for what it was, and didn't, because there was no, we didn't have a shares agreement or a percentage, so forget it. And they forget who helped get them there, right? Which is just shit. But ultimately, again, it's business. It's nobody's doing this to. I mean, there are companies who buy companies to get rid of those companies because they're a competitor.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
So, but again, business. It's business. It's not. Most of the time, it's not. Like, I don't think Benioff is spending $8 billion because he personally wants to shut Informatica down. Like,
no. All right, so let's have it. So, just to rewind a little bit out of where we went there.
Sorry, we went tangent.
So that's it's always fun. I will follow you wherever you want to go, Cathy. But if we were advising clients, not necessarily of Salesforce and Informatica, but more generally, where you've got a big vendor and you're dependent on them, and an acquisition is happening, either of them or whatever, what sort of advice do you normally get? And I've got our good friend Tony Burns' voice in my head from CMS Watch or Real Story Group saying, buyer beware. He seems to say that. That seems to be the advice he gives for everything. So we'll kick off with that.
Yeah, so I agree with Tony. It is up to you to understand what's going on with either companies you're thinking about working with or companies that you're highly reliant on in cases like this, where your Martech stack is built foundationally on an Adobe or a Salesforce or something like that. It is your responsibility to keep up with what's going on and ask the questions of, okay, how does this impact me?
Yeah.
The other thing too is, when we do a technology selection, it's one of the things that we look at. Now, we're unique in that. I don't think that a lot of companies or analysts or people who help others acquire this kind of technology do that. We look at leadership, right? We look at like how they're doing, not only financially, but culturally. What's their M&A history? Dig in to see if there's anything going around. There's always rumors, and you can find information just about anywhere. But also what their plan is and how they plan on filling gaps. So if they're lagging behind, you can be pretty sure that there's probably an acquisition either going to happen of them or for them in order to catch up if they're going to stay in the game. So it behooves the customer, either existing or prospective, to look under the covers on that.
Yeah. It's funny you're talking about management team there, and we were also, I think, did you mention Sitecore? But also, changes in management team for me, the poster child of that right now is Sitecore, right? It seems to be.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Every year, the new CEO, new CMO, new leadership team, new direction and stuff. So yeah, that's something to look at for sure.
Yes.
I won't ask for your view because that would be unfair because we didn't prepare that. But all right, so we've thought about from the customer's perspective. So we need to do our own due diligence on the platforms that we have, and maybe talk to folks like yourself, industry analysts that are smart. But if you're actually in one of these organizations and you're a marketing leader or a content marketing leader or content operations leader or whatever you are, What advice do you give? Is it similar advice you would give to those kinds of clients that you're talking to?
In terms of the
individuals inside they're either
the company being acquired or the company doing the acquirement.
Both sides. I think we've given some of this advice already about culture and stuff. But if you're inside one of these organizations, either as an acquirer or being acquired, is there any general advice that you give to the executives you talk to when you see that sort of thing going on?
We don't do a lot of. We actually did a chunk. We were busy on M&As for a while ago, but haven't done it in a while. But again, it's about doing due diligence, right? It's customer first, or audience, not even customer. It's audience first.
Yeah.
What does this mean for your audiences? So from the early stages, how are you communicating it to people who are just maybe starting to look at who you are, to those who are in the process, right? So they're, maybe they've had a demo, maybe they've gone even beyond that, to those who are a customer and are with you. Those are 3 different messaging strategies, and you've got to make sure that it's consistent across the board.
Yeah.
But it's, what does it mean for you? Like, what does it mean for them, the with them, right? Yeah. And being earnest in that. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I think a lot of vendors where they go astray is it's this blanket communication. Mm-hmm. That doesn't fill the needs of those very distinct and different stages. Absolutely. And also keep in mind, for those companies that are doing the acquiring, this is often the trigger for a reassessment of technology. This is a major trigger for people to rethink, is this the right technology for me?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So you should be talking about that too.
Yeah, exactly. And the big press release that talks about synergy and all that kind of good stuff is the regular customer, they're not going to care about that. What does it, like you say, what does it mean for them? So that's brilliant. Okay, so what else? I had one more story. I was at a supply chain company, and there was a big rumor they were going to get acquired by SAP. And the management team within the company that I work for was saying, it's fine. Culturally, it's going to be a reverse takeover. We're going to take our values and culture to SAP.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's 200 of us and 1 billion of them, right? Anyway. All right, so let's wrap this up. So what's coming up for you, Cathy?
I am going to be in Chicago next week for Salesforce Connection.
Oh, splendid. You'll be able to ask some of these questions directly.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I've got a few customer meetings, and looks like a really good lineup. So I'm excited about that. Yeah. And then things kind of slow down for the summer. Not a lot of conferences going on, and then it'll ramp back up again. But I'm sure we will talk before then, and there will be other things that I can share.
Absolutely.
And I have two blog posts going up this week. So
I was going to ask you, because I do like to. I mean, almost in every show I end up talking about Seventh Bear. So those blog posts that you're writing are going to be on seventhbear.com, correct?
They are, yes.
Excellent. And what do you want to give us a clue on the topics, or shall we wait?
Yeah, you can wait, because I'm not sure which one I'm going to post first. So,
all right, I'm going to wait. Plus, your video thingies should be coming out soon, so we can.
They should,
those.
Yes.
All right, splendid. So, when people spin the dial on the interwebs, Cathy, apart from Seventh Bear, where are they going to find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, which is predominantly. If you want to check out my Camino posts, I did a chronicle on Instagram, so just Cathy McKnight.
Splendid. Yeah,
feel free, and I'll accept and follow, and I'll follow you back. And I've actually got a blog post coming up on for Salesforce in June as well. So that'll be later this month.
All right. Well, I'll add any of that stuff to the show notes as they appear. And will I see you again in a month to discuss all things content?
Absolutely.
I look forward to it. I'll see you then.
Great. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
So that's a wrap on episode 274 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. Thanks to Cathy, who as ever was fun and offers valuable insights, as she is so well connected with these companies. If you need advice on your content stack, I highly recommend giving Cathy a shout. I've been your host, Ian Truscott, and you can find links to me, Cathy, and all the links we referred to there in the show notes on rockstarcmo.com, where you can also find our blog, newsletter, and all of our previous episodes. We'd love to hear from you, so please reach out via the website or LinkedIn. Just search Rockstar CMO. I'm sure you'll find us. Or just keep listening. I'm glad you're here. Coming up for us here on Rockstar CMO FM this week, we have Robert back in the bar on Saturday, and Jeff will be back in the studio on Wednesday. So I hope you'll join us for one or both of those here on Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Robbie Samuels hosts the On the Schmooze podcast. Robbie, tell listeners what to expect from the show.
Since 2015, I've interviewed entrepreneurs who overcame challenges to achieve success in their field or industry. Tune in to On the Schmooze to listen as I ask deep questions to elicit untold stories about leadership and networking.
And where can people subscribe?
Find the show at ontheschmooze.com or on marketingpodcast.net, or just search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard them. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.